An issue dominating the front pages. The Bell Hotel in Epping in Essex is set to close, and all the asylum seekers living there must leave by the end of the 12th of September. That's around 140 people we're talking about here. Now, the High Court approved a temporary injunction launched by Epping Forest Council that argued that the hotel was in clear breach of their planning permission because it was no longer being used as an actual hotel. Now, lawyers for the Home Office tried and failed to intervene in the 11th hour, arguing that injunction applications like this one could become a new norm if adopted by a lot of local authorities. Now, the Conservative-controlled Broxbourne Council in Hertfordshire has already said that they will go down this path. And Nigel Farage has also signalled that the councils controlled by reform will be following Epping's lead. Now, the Bell Hotel itself has seen protests in recent weeks, many of them peaceful demonstrations, but heated protests have also taken place with some police officers injured after it was alleged an asylum seeker living there had been charged with sexually assaulting a teenage girl, allegations which he denies. Now, what do you make of this closure? Phil, what do you make of it?
Well, clearly the hotels aren't working for anyone. Mm-hmm. They're not working for the local communities. They're certainly not working for the refugees who are stuck in them and presumably can't go out. And, you know, last year, some terrible people in this country, whom I'm ashamed of, tried to burn these hotels down and burn the people inside them. So clearly this is not working and something needs to be done. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's the old Irish adage, I wouldn't be starting here. The Tories allowed the number of asylum seekers to grow and grow and grow and grow. So it's one reason, not the only reason, we've got the crisis now. It needs to be, the whole process needs to be speeded up. The refugees need to be put in secure accommodation. I don't think there'd be that bothered where it is, whether it's in military barracks or that sort of thing. Also, a lot of them, I think it's around 80%, when they go through the system, are genuine refugees. So I don't have any problem with them working. There's loads of jobs they could be doing in this country that Brits don't want to do, like picking fruit, working on the land. Let them work. And let them live disperse them around the community, let them live out there, and then it's less of a problem.
OK. Carole, how have we got to this?
Hard to know where to start there. There's not a single thing Phil just said I agree with. One, you're saying they're not bothered where they go. You're not looking at the TikTok videos, Phil. They're all on TikTok telling people
One person was.
You're not...
They're all on TikTok, one person.
One that made the papers, Phil.
Yeah, one person was on TikTok.
Do you look at TikTok? Because I do. Yeah. And there are videos there telling people to come.
You say they're all on
because they get put in 4-star hotels. No, I think this story is fantastic. This is about people power. You know, the people of Epping have spoken, and it has worked. And this government thought it could actually defy the law. The laws didn't apply to them, so they put people in hotels all over the country, defying.
Well, the last
planning
government
permission.
started it.
I'll let you talk, Phil. Let me talk now, please. I think people will be delighted with this. I think it's going to cause an avalanche of court cases where people are going to say, "We're not having them in my town." Unlike Phil, I think they want to be in hotels. It's one of the big pull factors. Macron said it when he came here a couple of weeks ago. They've come from living in a tent in Calais, in a one-man tent in Calais, in a warehouse, to living in a 4-star hotel. Do not tell me that is not a pull factor to come to this country, because it is. And I think now that this is going to throw their whole process into chaos. Labour are in big trouble now over this, and quite right they should. And you know what I think about the people of Epping? They were slandered, especially by people like the BBC, as far right in their protests in the streets. No, they're not far right. This was mums and dads and families who just wanted to keep their kids safe, because the person who has been charged in that area has been charged with 7 counts of sexual assault. And that is happening in areas all over the country. And people have had enough of it. We're not having it anymore. Where do I think they should go? I think they should be out of towns and cities, and they should be put in remote places, away build detention centres. You know, Reform was talking about building Nightingale prisons.
Yes.
Build Nightingale detention centres and put them away from people where they can cause harm.
I have a question about that. Kemi Badenoch said perhaps they should be housed in tents that are in
No, 'cause you
remote
just-
areas.
you just
Hang
put it
on.
in Calais.
Well, that's what she said. I'm just telling you what she said. OK. Nightingale centres have been proposed, but you're going to have to put those somewhere. And you're going to have to get planning permission to put those somewhere. So aren't you also going to get the same problem? The councils are going to say, we don't want those Nightingale centres in our area.
We have plenty of islands around this island. Put them somewhere because, you know, you cannot keep on jetting hordes of young, unvetted men in the middle of communities. We know, we have seen time and again now, they're causing havoc in those communities. It's not fair.
Well, they're not causing
They
havoc.
are causing
One or
havoc,
two
Phil.
are, Carole.
Phil, the news has been full for the past 2 months of people being
patiently
assaulted.
to you. Let me come back now. There are so many myths around this, exaggerations and myths. Luxury hotels.
Four stars, pretty luxury. No, you
have
can't
you been
say
in
that.
one?
Four-star Canary Wharf Hotel. Yes, I have been in that hotel. Pretty luxurious.
They're repurposed to fit lots of people in. They're not like the four-star hotels you or me might go on when we go on holiday.
Better than a shack in sub-Saharan Africa.
It is. But using language like luxury hotel, that's
you live in a different world because to a lot of people, four-star hotels are luxury. They are, and lots of people in this country can't afford to stay in a four-star hotel. Yet these migrants go, they get room service, they get their laundry done, they get
don't
pocket
get
money.
room
We should make clear that's
not true,
they are
Carole.
not, when they're using the hotels are not run like you would expect a paying customer to have that service.
They do not get room service.
They get 3 meals a day. They get fed 3 meals a day.
Well, how many meals would you give them, Carole?
They're not cooking.
Would you give them bread and gruel?
Okay.
Look,
let's
carry on with that.
When I was trained as a journalist, I was taught to check facts.
Yeah.
And one of the facts, because some things are just, for the tabloids, are just too good to be true.
I check every fact.
You've checked room service.
What do you call?
They don't get room service.
So they're in Calais and they're living. They've got a caravan on site. They can go and buy a bottle of pop and a sandwich. They come here. They get put in a four-star hotel and they get given 3 meals a day. They would consider that to be room service.
Well, how many meals a day would you give them?
What do you mean?
Well, you wouldn't give them 3 meals a day.
I would starve them. Is that what you're trying to get me to say in a tabloid style? That's what you're trying to do.
What about
you're
letting them
trying to put
work?
a tabloid slant on what I'm saying.
What about?
I'm very proud to work for tabloids, by the way.
Yeah, I know you are. I'm very
proud.
proud you do.
Yeah.
And your journalism is brilliant. Your journalism is brilliant.
And I check my facts. And people watching this show are going to be furious that asylum seekers, illegal asylum seekers, get put into four-star hotels. It's not fair.
Let's break there. I'm going to be asking you where you would house channel migrants. What's the alternative to hotels like the Bell Hotel? Where should these people be kept as we are waiting for them to go through the asylum process? So give us a call now with your thoughts. 027 862 2222 is the number that you need. See you after the break. Let's discuss where you would house channel migrants. 027 862 2222 is the number that you need to let us know what you think. At their peak, there were over 400 hotels being used to house asylum seekers. Now, they're just they're about 210 with about 32,000 people in them. The Bell Hotel in Epping is closing. So what is the alternative? Well, I'm joined now by the CEO of Care4Calais, Steve Smith. Steve, thank you for joining us. Welcome to the show. Your reaction first to the news that the Epping Hotel has been closed down. The 140 or so people that are in there have got 28 days to be moved out. What's your reaction?
Well, my reaction, as you might expect, is one of extreme concern because this appears to be a victory for violent protest. Surely the actions of the people outside the hotel, the threatening actions of those outside the hotel, are worse than anything we've seen from those accommodated inside. And although we frequently hear the mantra, this is about protecting our children, I have to say when I was growing up, I wouldn't have been taken to a situation, as you're showing on the screen at the moment, where people jump up and down on police vans, kick police vans, beat up policemen, throw things at policemen. I mean, that's absolutely appalling. That can't be about protecting children, surely. Where was the peaceful protest in all of this? As I say, it appears to be a victory for violent protest.
Can I interrupt you here? There were no violent protests by those parents, not at all. We know that the people bussed in, who were busing, that the police escorted to the protest, were trying to be violent, but it was not actually the people of Epping who were violent. Get that right.
And you say, Carole, you can't say that. Carole, you just saw the pictures. You just saw people jumping up and down on police vans. You just saw people kicking police vans. Those weren't individuals that were bussed in. Those were people who were part of the protest outside the hotel.
How do you know they weren't part of the people bussed in? How do you know that?
How do you know that? How do you know that they were?
I mean, well, how do you know they weren't? So you just said as a fact earlier, that they were. Can I also say, you say that the people in the protest cause a far bigger danger than the people inside the hotels. Simply not true. An asylum seeker has now been charged.
What do you mean simply not true? Explain yourself.
Well, let me tell you.
What do you mean not true?
Well, I'm about to explain myself, but you just interrupted. One of the asylum seekers in that hotel has been charged with 7 offences of sexual abuse. So I'm sorry, that man is a danger to the women in that community.
One of the individuals in that hotel has been charged with 7 offences, 2 of which are sexual abuse. And I understand, and of course this is all sub judice, so we have to be very careful what we say. I understand that was confined within the hotel and probably was committed against another individual in the hotel.
Let him finish.
I'm not saying that's great. Of course it's not great.
It's not.
But we've got 140 people there. I'm not protecting that individual. But why should the others all be demonised because of the actions of one? And that was confined within the hotel.
Can I just say something? A friend of mine is, I'm not going to name the place, but it's very similar to what's going on in Epping. And she went, and there were a group of so-called local people. She could see they were local people, some of her neighbours and friends. And she said some of the abuse that they were getting as people who were welcoming the refugees to the community was vile and obscene, and shouting, kill them, send them back, get rid of them, kill them. Horrible language for people who've escaped from wars and persecution. Hang on, let me just finish. And she was with her daughter, and as they left, one of the demonstrators came up and pushed the daughter violently, and the police barely intervened.
Okay, I want to bring us...
That's an actual story that happened.
I want to bring us back to the question that we're asking, which is, where would you house the people who are waiting to claim asylum in the UK, the people who have arrived? So, Steve, let me ask you, if hotels are now, from what we are given to understand, going to be challenged up and down the country for housing asylum seekers, what is the alternative?
It's really difficult, isn't it, Alexis? It's really difficult. Back in 2002, the numbers seeking asylum were pretty much the same as they are now. They peaked in 2002. Did we have people in hotels at the time? No, we didn't. And the reason that people were put into hotels was because of COVID, and it was like an emergency measure. The problem we have is that the numbers went up and up, and as you've probably already said in this programme, hit something like 400 hotels at one stage. And part of that problem was, of course, because the Conservative government at the time decided to stop processing applications. And that just created a massive logjam. So the numbers are coming down. We've seen them come down from 400 to around 210. The answer to this is probably to look at speeding up the process, but it has to be done with decency, compassion, humanity and professionalism to make sure we haven't got loads of people suddenly littered out onto the streets after they're thrown out of hotels. But back in 2002, it was people were dispersed throughout the community. So it's like houses of multiple occupancy, flats, that sort of thing. It allowed them to integrate with communities. And as your other guest said earlier, something like 80% of individuals get their refugee status approved in any case. So surely it's better not to isolate people, not to detain people, to put them dispersed throughout communities where they don't create a magnet for violence, but are actually able to integrate and continue forward with their lives in safety and freedom.
Steve, thank you. Stay with us. Steve's going to stay with us throughout the debate. Let's go to your calls now. Christopher's in Kent. Christopher, thank you for joining us. Good morning. Where would you house asylum seekers?
Oh, good morning, everybody. I had the same idea as Carole, actually. There's plenty of islands around the UK, some of which used to be inhabited, where we could actually set up these Nightingale centres for them. One island, in fact, off the Scilly Isles, Samson Island, was actually used as a penal colony back in the 1800s. So I think we could set up Nightingale centres on those islands, and also it would send a message back to those people and the people smugglers that actually they won't automatically gain access to the mainland. I don't know why this idea wasn't actually considered instead of Rwanda, because it seems quite an obvious, opportunity, to use those islands.
Christopher, I'm not.
I think the other thing is, sorry, can I also
of course,
make one comment actually about organisations such as your gentleman's there, Care4Calais. Unfortunately, I think they are part of the problem, because I think they are encouraging the situation of migrants crossing illegally into the country.
Okay, Christopher, thank you. I have to give Steve a right of response there very briefly. Steve, are you part of the problem?
Of course, I'm not going to say that we're part of the problem. Of course, we're not. We don't encourage the people smugglers in any way, shape or form. We don't give people instructions on how to cross the channel. All we're trying to do is provide a humanitarian response to...
Go ahead, Steve.
All we're trying to do is provide a humanitarian response to a very difficult situation. We're dealing with people who fled war, persecution, torture, modern-day slavery, trafficking, you name it. They've been through absolute terrors, about 75 to 80% of them, and we know this from speaking to them day in, day out and meeting them on the coast of France. Therefore, throughout society, where is compassion? Where is kindness? Where is decency? Are those becoming old-fashioned concepts?
Can I just
All we're trying to do is provide some sort of humanitarian response in a very difficult situation.
Steve, thank you. Carole, very briefly, because we've got to go.
Your organisation has a centre in Calais at some of the camps where you are talking to people, you are talking to migrants, and you are advising them on what to do. So I've seen it. I've actually seen it happening. So please don't say you're not
That's absolute balderdash.
It's not.
That is absolute balderdash.
It's on film where
Okay, I'm going to bring this to an end because I have to go to the break. Steve is going to stay with us, so we're going to be taking more of your calls on your thoughts of where would you house asylum seekers that have crossed the channel on small boats. Everyone living at the Bell Hotel in Essex has to leave. They have been ordered to leave. But what's the alternative? Where should these people go? Empty flats, disused barracks, camps with tents. We've heard people saying, as we heard from Christopher there, perhaps islands that we could put those peoples on. What would be your solution? 0207 862 2222 is the number that you need. I want your calls on this. Where would you house channel migrants, asylum seekers? 0207 862 2222 is the number that you need. Want your suggestions? Let's go straight to your calls. Barbara has been waiting to speak to us from Cheshire. Barbara, welcome to the show. What would be your solution?
Good morning.
Morning.
Well, my solution would be, I'm a caravan owner, and the caravans are only allowed to stay on a site now for about 20 years. Mm-hmm. My caravan is fully working. It's got a shower, beautiful carpeting, a kitchen. It's got enough room for to house 7 people. There'll be thousands of caravans now all over the country that are coming to the end of their tenure. So why can't the government buy these caravans? Because all that happens is the caravan site owners sell them for scrap, a couple of £1,000 each, put them on one of those remote islands that the gentleman was talking about, and maybe build a detention centre, a centre up there for the asylum seekers who, and set up the administration for it, put a little shop on there for them, a toilet block, and they would have their own community whilst their asylum was being...
Gotcha. Let me just ask Steve about that. It's a common theme now. It's coming up again. An island, a sparsely populated island or remote island, put temporary housing there, whether it's caravans or huts or tents. Would something like that be workable, Steve?
I wonder how long Barbara would see them being there for. I mean, would that be until their claim is processed, which could be a year, could be a couple of years at worst?
Yes.
Or would she see them being there for life? Would that be a permanent detention centre? Would it effectively almost become a sort of offshore concentration camp? I'm not surprised when I hear people talking. I'm not surprised when I hear people talking like this, because the misinformation and the propaganda in the press all the time is off the scale. I mean, Telegraph last week, I saw an article online saying that the government's lost track of 150,000 migrants. there was a picture of people being offloaded from a border force boat wearing orange life jackets. So the natural mental affiliation is, oh, these are all asylum seekers who have come across by small boats. Actually, when you read the article, it was about people who had come in on care visas, and the government didn't know whether they were still working in the care industry, whether they were still in the country, whether they'd gone back home or whatever. But that sort of propaganda is seeping into people's minds all the time, demonising people seeking asylum
hang on.
and coming up with solutions
he can't
like
be
this.
getting away with using words like concentration camp and in the next breath talking about propaganda in the newspapers. How dare you say concentration camp? You know, we are under no obligation in this country to put people up who come here illegally in 4-star hotels. That is not our job or our moral duty.
Well, look, can I just say something now, Carole? Can I just say something? My grandfather was placed in a internment camp on the Isle of Man during World War II. What they did then is he was from Czechoslovakia, he was a refugee to this country, and what they did then, they threw everyone together, whether they were Nazis or Jewish, into the same camp on the Isle of Man with his brother as well. You know, that was like a concentration camp, and that was ridiculous, because putting Jews and Nazis together, hey-ho.
Okay. I want to go back to the calls, because so many people want to have their say. So let's hear what they have to say. Let's head to Liverpool. James is there waiting to speak to us. James, good morning. Where would you house asylum seekers?
Morning, panel. And Carole,
Morning.
Absolutely love Carole. Carole is just amazing. Watch her on the Patrick show. Keep it going, Carole. Absolutely brilliant. Right, I think that they should be living in tents. These conditions where they're supposed to be coming from their countries.
Yeah.
Move them over in a tent. I think Christopher earlier on, I've changed my mind now to what Christopher. I've moved them to an island until they're being processed, and if they're in desperate need and they've got children, they'd be a high priority. Right?
Okay.
Only if they've got children. But I think Steve Smith, I think Steve Smith in his mansion, because he's the CEO of Care4Calais, I think he should, in one of his mansions, if he's got one, he should house at least 150 himself and see how he copes with them.
All right, James, I'm interested in your thoughts of where they should go. You've given us your response, tents, possibly on an island. Thank you, James. Let's go to Shell, who's in Bedfordshire. Shell, welcome to the show. What would your solution be?
Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
Morning.
Okay. My solution would be, right, so you may recall I called before and I worked at immigration at Yardswood. I also worked for HMP Bedford.
Right.
My solution would be, please do not house them in the middle of town, because hard-working people who don't get the same sort of benefits, it will frustrate us. We will think, hang on a minute, what about us? I'll give you an example. So, my son recently found himself homeless. They put him in a B&B about 70 miles away from where I lived, and he had to travel every day to go to work, all those miles to keep his job. People of England are just so frustrated. Carole, me and you should stand on Tower Bridge, wave our flag to the government and just say, look, we have every empathy for genuine asylum seekers.
All right. Okay, Shell, I don't want to cut you short, but there's so many people who want to speak, but you've made your point. You made your point very forcefully. Steve, I want to come back to you. Do you understand Shell's point that there's a lot of people in communities who know of people who are homeless, who are struggling to find a roof to put over their heads, and they're looking across at hotels full of asylum seekers and they're thinking, hang on a minute, what about the British people? We are being left behind. Do you understand the frustration of people like Shell and others?
Of course, and I have every sympathy for the situation Shell finds herself in with her son. The problem we have, though, is that this is a countrywide problem that's being forced down into the it's all being pointed towards those seeking asylum. There are difficulties across the board: cost of living, trying to get GPs appointments, trying to get hospital appointments. All of those problems are out there, and in a way, this is almost a diversion. I mean, the figures, there's something like, and they've lost track of the figures, but something like 800,000 to 1.2 million illegal immigrants in the country. And we've just spoken about how there are about 30,000 or so people seeking asylum in hotels. This is a tiny, tiny proportion of the overall figures, and yet they are the ones being constantly demonised.
Okay.
And it takes the attention of these
So
other
Steve,
things.
Steve has just said he understands what people like Shell feel like. No, he doesn't. He hasn't a clue, because what he's just said has overridden all of that. You know, we talk about people waiting for doctor's appointments. You know, every GP now gets 158 quid if he sees an asylum seeker, and they get a half-an-hour appointment. We can't get those appointments. Why should they get it? Why should they be prioritised over some? People like Shell are angry about that.
Okay.
Don't blame her.
Let's hear from more of your calls. Rosemary's in Northamptonshire. Rosemary, welcome to the show. Good morning. What would you do with asylum seekers? Where would you like to see them housed?
Well, the solution is staring us, or i.e. the government, in the face. They've been quite happy to live in a jungle. I wouldn't
They don't live in jungles.
put that on anybody. But we've got loads of empty warehouses.
Rosemary, where are you getting the people coming here have been living in a jungle? Where's that coming from? I'm confused.
Calais Forest and everything. It's a common word. I've just slipped that in. But they've been happy to live in warehouses. Some of them, if they want privacy, even tents in warehouses. Why can't we put them in warehouses, chemical toilets, meals on wheels, as long as they've got a water tap and a kettle, perhaps a doctor visiting weekly, a dentist weekly.
Would you support that?
Okay, so Rosemary, you know, I don't think people are coming from jungles. However, what she's talking about is Calais, where the French do not put the people up in hotels. What they do is they give them a site near Calais, and they do live in warehouses, and they have individual tents within those warehouses, where Care4Calais are, by the way.
All right.
So that's what she's talking about. But in a way...
Carole, I've got to stop you there. Good, I've got to go to the break. Thank you all for your calls on this. Matt is going to be exploring this later. Should the government do what the Conservatives are suggestions and bring back the Rwanda plan?